The Zone Coverage Podcast Network.
They may be drinkers, Robin, but they're also human beings.
Hell yeah, let's get Stinko.
Welcome, Giles and Goalie Podcast. I am co-host Giles Farrell. Sitting next to me is co-host Ben Remington.
Hello.
We are recording post Ben Remington backyard barbecue baby event, in which good pulled pork sandwiches were had, sans coleslaw.
With coleslaw, yes.
And then a lot of beans left over.
I'm going to be eating beans for the next 2 weeks, I think.
And beer, moderately amount still left. Like, we really tried to hit your beer.
We did pretty good with the beer, I feel like. We did pretty good with the beer. I have put down a fair share. I'm pretty sure you have put down a fair share.
Well, yeah, I was sitting next to Carol the whole day, so
you had to keep up.
Do you want a beer? Yeah, I'll get you another. Okay, and that's how it goes. But yeah, that was a fun day. It was humid, and then it rained, and then it was seemingly nice. But that was kind of after the party dispersed.
Sure.
You got plenty of diapers in your raffle, which was I think it was the goal. Had everyone put in for your prize raffle, but you had to bring diapers for the entry. So I also commend you for doing that because, as I learned myself, diapers are expensive. So a wise decision on your end.
It wasn't even really my decision so much. It was just something I was told that I was doing.
Okay.
You know how those things go.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, it's just a wise decision regardless.
Right. So there was a baby shower that was actually off-site at a hotel where my wife and all of the women congregated to do baby shower things. I shudder to think what happened in that room. So the idea from my stepmom, who was doing most of the planning, and my dad happily helped, was to plan a diaper party for the guys to hang out and drink beer and watch baseball and not really play any games baby-related or open any gifts baby-related.
We did that.
It's kind of nice.
Yeah, and your dad did a good job of hosting today. He was on top of it.
Yeah.
He was also very self-aware. Had a few jokes cracked on his behalf at various points in the afternoon, which I found very hilarious. But he did. He did a great job hosting, and Brock is dead to the world now.
Yeah, my dog is going to sleep for the next 24 hours.
He had so much going on today, he couldn't help himself. So, so the Minnesota Wild, it was again kind of a quieter week up until draft weekend.
Yeah.
Which, we didn't know what we were going to get. The draft, obviously, Friday night came with its usual, anticipation of a lot of trades and whatnot, which we didn't get on Friday.
No.
Prior to the first round, because the NHL was lacking of a firm salary cap number for next season, which they didn't get until the draft concluded on Saturday afternoon. That didn't stop some trades to happen on Saturday morning prior to the start of the second round, but I really feel like that impacted the Friday events. There was not... I think there was just one trade, and that didn't come till like an hour and 18 minutes into the draft, and that was just kind of a moving up into the draft.
Yep.
I think it was Philadelphia and Arizona.
Yeah.
They swapped.
They moved up like 4 spots.
Yeah. Basically, Philadelphia moved back like 3 places to allow Arizona to move up, and it was very disappointing. I'm sorry, Philadelphia moved down.
Yeah.
They moved down. I apologize, but yeah, it
close enough. A lot of beer.
Yeah, a lot of beer. It makes me mad, and I'm going to vent about this for a minute because I watched the NBA draft on Thursday night. I was thoroughly entertained. There were a lot of trades, and, the NBA doesn't make trades official until the new league year starts, so these players are wearing hats of the wrong team, which is everyone's pet peeve. Yeah. Which I get. It bothers me, but whatever. And I was still really entertained. You've got Waj out there just,
dropping bombs,
trades, and he was basically predicting the draft picks. He was saying, teams are focused on this player, which Dane Mizutani of the Pioneer Press tried to emulate on day 2 of the NHL draft, to his credit. And, just from an entertainment standpoint, you even get these players speaking after, they're picked, and they're just so fascinating to hear from. They don't have hockey speak.
Yeah.
Which it's really entertaining to me. I don't know if it's really entertaining to a casual sports fan, but for me, somebody who's just used to hockey speak in these draft events, you see these guys in very sharp suits, and they've got these different patterns on their suits. Bull had a spider web on his suit,
right.
and if he was in the NHL draft, having a suit like that on, he's going to drop 5 rounds because that's how the NHL is. And I'm just so entertained on Thursday night, and then I go to Friday, and there's one trade, and there's no activity. I'm not entertained. You just have, everybody goes up there, they make their pick, players come off, they talk to them, and it's still hockey speak. Oh, I'm excited to play for this team, dream come true. Give me something, anything from an entertainment value, which goes back a couple weeks ago when we vented about the NHL.
Yeah.
And how they just don't do a good enough job of marketing their product, and I'm at a loss.
Yeah. No, I'm with you, and I think that I don't know, the NBA draft, I wasn't super entertained as much as maybe you were on it, because the thing that I think happened with the NBA draft was every time a player was picked, the NBA sideline reporter, I forget her name, but was desperately trying to milk any emotion out of the players as much as possible.
She did.
Well, and so it just the player would walk up and they'd be like, "Oh, you were just drafted. Hey, talk to us about your dead mom." And it's just whoa, pump the brakes. Is this real? I mean, I get, obviously the guy's mom was a very important part of his life and all that, but it was such a desperate plea to, and then when the Japanese kid was drafted, hey, say something in Japanese. It's just it just seems so forced and corny. I didn't enjoy the NBA draft as much as you did. But I'm 100% with you on the NHL draft. I think honestly the worst part of it was the coverage. And it was NBCSN. And it was, why in God's name? I mean, I get it. Pierre McGuire has a wealth of knowledge when it comes to hockey.
Yeah, this is something I didn't tweet out, but he should not have been on the broadcast.
Oh, my God,
they
it was
had
painful.
Bob McKenzie, and I believe they had Craig Button
also
on as the other analyst. Guys who have spent time studying. And
sure,
Pierre McGuire is only 2 weeks removed from the end of the Stanley Cup playoffs, and I can't imagine he spent more than those 2 weeks studying these players. And I'm sorry, I know NBC has a raging hard-on for Pierre McGuire and getting him included in every NHL broadcast, but you don't need him there in that spot. And just put anyone else who's had more knowledge of the draft, of the prospects, in the broadcast. You don't need to include Pierre McGuire in that. And it is so difficult to listen to him try and talk about these players. And I want to hear from the guys who've actually seen these players, McKenzie's and Buttons and all the scouts and whatnot. Just don't force feed me more Pierre McGuire when he is only 2 weeks removed from the end of the Stanley Cup playoffs. And this guy is on your telecast every night during the playoffs.
Right.
He has not seen these guys.
Yeah.
Don't try and tell me he has. And credit to Pierre for trying to do his research on these guys, but 2 weeks just is not enough time. Give me guys who have been doing this all year long.
Right. And the worst part of it was the dad jokes. Like, Pierre Maguire just could not help himself. Anytime an opportunity presented itself to say something extremely corny, he jumped on it. And it was just like...
But that's me, too.
And no, because, like, you're not anywhere in the realm of that bad with... Like, nobody that I know is in the realm of that bad with dad jokes. Like, it made it so excruciating to try to watch. And then, like you said, they interview these poor kids, and they're 18. And, I realize that hockey is a lot different culturally than basketball, but it was so boring to, the interviews from these kids. And, it was the same questions to all of them. And it just wasn't anything that, was really made you feel anything for any of these kids. Wasn't anything that showcased any of their personality at all. And I think that's what's missing. I think that you need to showcase these kids' personalities. Like, I don't want to know how Matt Boldy feels about being drafted. I know he's elated. I know he's worked his entire life for this. I know he's excited to get started. I know he'd get pucks in deep. That's all he's given. I want to know more about him on a personal level. I want to know more about his personality. I don't care that he's excited. Of course he's excited. You just got drafted in the first NHL. If you're not excited, like, we got problems. But give me more of these kids' personalities. Like, the only one that I saw that showed any personality was, and we'll get to this, was Cole Caulfield. When they interviewed him before the draft even started, and they said, "Do you think you should go third?" And he said, "Absolutely." He said, "I think that, it's been proven, and they were talking about the Blackhawks taking him third. He goes, "I think the Blackhawks, seeing that they have a guy like Alex DeBrincat who's proven that he can score goals at the NHL level despite his size, because I think that it's not a deterrent for me at all. I think that I absolutely deserve to be drafted, high, and I think that, teams that pass me are going to regret it." And it's like, yes, that's what I want. I want some personality. I want to see this kid, and we'll get to him, but I want to see something where, they're human, I mean, beyond human. Like, they're actually human, they're teenagers. Like,
just a snippet of personality is what you want. And I like that. I like hearing a player say, "Yeah, I want to be third.
Yeah,
I deserve to be
absolutely.
third." And then he gets shamed for it by hockey culture for saying that.
Right.
Like, you go where you go. Okay, this is going to go downhill. And
we already had this episode.
Another NHL crap post podcast.
Fair.
But
that's fair.
I guess to maybe get going into the actual draft part of it, we saw Jack Hughes, number 1 to the Devils, Capo Caco, number 2 to the Rangers, and then really with the Blackhawks, it began with, that's kind of where the stuff really started, because Hughes and Caco were the consensus 1 and 2 overall.
Yep.
And the Blackhawks passing on Byram.
Bynum? B-Y-N-A-M.
Bynum was an NBA player.
Yeah, Byman, then.
Something
Is
like
it?
that.
I don't know. I forget the exact pronunciation of it.
Sorry, it's been a day.
Yeah. Bynum.
Yeah, it was like Byron Bynum or something like that. But yeah, they passed on him, who was the best defenseman in the draft, and he went to Colorado. And basically, Bynum is regarded as, somebody who can step in and be NHL ready, now.
Right.
Sorry, Byram.
Byram.
Yeah, Byram. B-Y-R-A-M.
R, not an N. Gotcha.
And that's terrifying to me, and I tweeted this. McKinnon, Byram as a 1-2 punch for the Avalanche for the next decade is terrifying. and you watch all the attributes that is listed off for Byram, and that's scary.
Yeah.
You know, especially for Wild fans who loathe the Avalanche. That's frightening.
Right.
And there's a lot of room to get better in this division. And a team like the Avalanche, when they can draft somebody of that high caliber on the back end, that's killer. That makes a huge difference. Credit to them for just destroying the Senators in a trade.
Oh, God.
To get that pick.
How
that should have been Ottawa's pick.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know. That's kind of my big takeaway from the Central Division is the Avalanche getting Byram and basically setting themselves up for the next, decade with that kind of a 1-2 punch and up front and on the back end. And I was convinced that if Spencer Knight was on the board for them at 16, they were going to take him, which would have even really been a bigger, blow. They would have probably had the best draft at that point. It wouldn't have been close, but
yeah,
they didn't get that far. And but yeah, that's my first kind of big thought before we get to the Wild's pick, and then we can talk about that now. Yeah, with the 12th overall pick in the first round of the draft, the Minnesota Wild selected Matt Boldy from the U.S. National Development Team. He is a power forward type, but from what those who have really studied the draft and some draft guides even have, Boldy has the best shot in the draft, which is very encouraging. The Wild need guys who have good shots. Just from my standpoint, it's exhausting watching shots go right into the chest of the goaltender. So drafting a guy like Boldy who shoots to score is key for me. I wasn't appalled with the pick. I was, there was a little bit of disappointment. They passed on Cole Caulfield, who went 15th to the Canadiens. But, you wonder what was going on there because Cole Caulfield probably should have went a lot higher than he did, and he slipped to 15. So, you wonder what that is. I hope it's just simply not a size thing. He's only 5'7". I genuinely hope that's not the case, and I didn't catch this until, after I had kind of submitted my Saturday analysis for zone coverage when Paul Finn had his media chat. But he mentioned how he enjoyed picking players who were taller than him, which kind of threw up a little bit of a red flag for me.
Huge.
On what does that have to do with anything here at this juncture? Like, you're picking the best player available, but size shouldn't have a flying F of any kind of an input in your spreadsheet, essentially, of your best players.
Right.
And if you really were that emphatic about picking a player with size, then that kind of throws up a flag. But it didn't really register with me until he said that, because I actually thought really well of the Wild's draft. And I know maybe others are just kind of blah on it, but picking Matt Boldy I thought was a good pick. Obviously, I said before the pick, go with Caulfield, who was available, but they didn't. They picked Boldy, who I still liked. He has a lot of offensive upside, and he could potentially, after 1 year at Boston College this year, he could come to the NHL. That's
possibly.
That's in play. Like, it's not a guarantee, but that's just something that I've read on him.
Sure.
Is he could come to the NHL after just 1 year of college if he does well enough, which, the Wild could use somebody of that kind of offensive caliber if he can have a great year at Boston College.
I think what that quote meant to me, and that what that quote signed to me, is that they come to pick 12 and they're looking at Boldy and they're looking at Caulfield, and obviously their draft board is already set. But it told me that essentially the reason they took Boldy over Caulfield is size. Because Boldy's a big guy. I mean, Boldy's, 6'2", I think?
Yeah, 6'1".
6'1". So that's what that told me, is that they made that call based on size. Like, Boldy moved up their draft board. And again, maybe it's deserving. Maybe Boldy ends up having a better career than Caulfield. Entirely possible at that juncture of the draft. But and I thought about this quote again. So, and I want you to answer this. Name me the 5 best players in the Wild.
Right now?
Right now.
Like, are we just all around? Or are
Yeah,
we talking just skaters?
Just best. Well, yeah, skaters. Name me the 5 best skaters in the Wild right now.
All right. I'm going to go with Zach Parise.
Mm-hmm.
I still think Wall of Eric Stahl, even though it was a bit of a down year.
Sure.
Jared Spurgeon,
Uh-huh.
Matt Dumba,
Uh-huh.
and the 5th one's tough. That's a rough one. God. I'm going to wild card. I'm going to go with Ryan Donato.
Okay.
I liked what I saw from him at the end of
Sure.
the year, so I'll just fire him in there.
Fair enough. Or, I mean, okay. So, all of them except for Stahl, what do they have in common?
Wingers.
No. Dumba. Spurgeon.
Oh, shit. Oh, God. I don't know. Left shot.
They're all under 6 foot.
Mm.
I mean, and so I thought about this, and it's just like, because when I did the same exercise, I came up with Zucker instead of Donato. And I think I did Suter instead of Stahl.
Him. I'm so sorry.
And so I think I did Suter instead of Stahl. I think I did Zucker instead of Donato. You could go any way which way with it.
Right.
But the point is,
to my defense here, I'm sorry. Like, my brain has been, like, trained to believe that Jason Zucker's no longer a part of this team, as the general manager is actively trying to get rid of him.
entirely fair.
So, I apologize. He just completely slipped my mind. I would put him in ahead of Donato in that scenario.
But him, under 6 foot.
Under 6
he's
foot.
listed at 6 foot, but come on. So is Matt Dumba, but come on. I actually think Zucker's listed at 5'11". Dumba's listed at 6 foot. I mean, that's generous, as all hockey heights are. But all those guys. Stahl's a monster, yes, but the other 4 guys of the top 5 you just named, under 6 foot. And Paul Fenton is still making comments like this. And I'm trying not to be enraged by it, because it's not really worth being enraged by.
He really had a bad weekend in front of the microphone.
No wonder he hates talking to the media so much. But it's like, for me, it wasn't like infuriating, but it's just like, really, Paul? Really? Like, really? You're going to come out and say that, and how excited you are about your draft picks being tall? Look at your team. Like, look at the NHL. This isn't 1993 anymore. And even back then, you got guys like Theo Fleury, Pavel Bure, not a tall guy. Wayne Gretzky isn't super tall. And what was he, 6 foot, 6'1"? Not a lumbering guy by any stretch. He's actually pretty slight. It's so silly to me. I don't know. We don't need to focus on this, but that quote, I saw that quote too, and it definitely raised an eyebrow for me.
So, Matt Boldy, I wrote about on Zone Coverage with, basically saying, like, the Wild are shooting their shot with Matt Boldy, a guy with high offensive upside who, he has some risks, and, they did not maybe take the best player in that scenario with Cole Caulfield still on the board, even though the Wild say he, high on our list, wasn't going to be expected there in that spot. So I said was they basically did what I wanted them to do. And I know a lot of people are not happy with how the Wild drafted, but I thought they really did what I was thinking they needed to do, in that you took a player that had high offensive upside and really was looking for a forward.
Uh-huh.
And Matt Boldy can be that guy. He can be a good, sniper that this team maybe needs down the road. And I know they didn't take Cole Caulfield, but I still think it's a good pick. And, a lot of the scouts rave on him. whether it's, any of the draft guys that I read, or, Corey Pronman was big on him at The Athletic, who has spent, basically a year, studying these picks.
Yep.
And I'm not appalled about it. I think it was a good pick, and I hope it turns out to be a good pick. And I spent the good majority of the rest of Friday evening fighting the good fight on, saying it was a good pick. And I even did a YouTube video where I ran almost a half hour just, talking about it. So that's what I think. And, we can debate it, but we're not going to know really what the results are for, 4 or 5 years.
At least.
And that's the problem with the NHL drafts is we can sit here and say this team drafted well, this team drafted well, this team didn't draft well.
Right.
But we're not going to know for, 5-6 years.
Yep.
So, again, I like the pick. It's a shoot-your-shot pick. I can't complain about it, even though, Caulfield was on the board, and I was really big on him.
Yeah, and I think that there's lots of people out there that thought that Boldi was a better prospect than Caulfield, and then that's totally fine. And makes the
debatable.
Pick, that makes the pick completely reasonable. It's not like they passed up on Caulfield as if he was Jack Hughes.
Right.
A 5'7" Jack Hughes.
They weren't passing up on a Dominic Bach for a 4th-round defenseman.
Right. Yeah, God forbid. So no, I'm with you on that. I like the Boldi pick. I think that's a good pick. I think overall we can get into it further. I think they had a pretty good draft. I saw, draft grades are kind of what they are, but Corey Pronman, whose opinion we trust very much, gave the Wild a B. And I think that's fair. I think that Pronman's opinion was Boldi was a great pick. The picks they made after that, I think he said he wasn't wowed by, but he liked them.
Right.
It was kind of
good but
picks.
not great.
Yeah, good picks, but they didn't get a lot of tremendous steals, I think, was kind of the thing. So, I don't know. What do you want to just mow on down right down the picks, or just talk about it more in generalities?
No, we can kind of go down the picks a little bit. But I guess to finish up on Boldi here before we move over to rounds 2 through 7 is I'm excited. I'm excited to watch Matt Boldy this next year. It's exciting to have another prospect in the system that, you're really kind of excited to see.
Sure.
And even Corey Pronman on Friday night said this is a guy who could instantly vault over Kaprizov as best in the Wild system.
Wow.
So I think it was Pronman. I could be wrong, but somebody said that who I trust. I don't read people on draft analysis that I don't trust. And I also did spend a little bit of time Friday evening, in my video recap saying, I'm not comfortable overly talking about these picks and if they're good or bad or whatnot because I don't watch them.
Yeah.
And so I just kind of read what those who have say, so I tend to take their word for it. And so, yeah, that's kind of a thing. But, yeah, it's exciting to have a prospect of that caliber in the Wild system again. Whether that was Boldi or Caulfield, it was going to be exciting regardless. So that's kind of where I'm at. So I will be very curious to see how he does at Boston College this next year in the Hockey East and whatnot. So watching him will be fun, and hopefully in the not too distant future we will see him move on to the NHL. Hopefully after a good season or two with the Eagles. But yeah, we can transition over to rounds 2 through 7 here, which was Saturday picks. So before round 2 started Saturday afternoon, I guess, if you will, because it wasn't till a noon start local time here in the Central Time Zone, because it was in Vancouver, which, for somebody who had a birthday gathering to go to at 1, that was highly inconvenient because I'm used to the draft being like a 9 or 10 a.m. start on day 2, but that's neither here nor there. But yeah, before round 2 started, we saw some trades in the league. Patrick Marleau was traded. PK Subban was traded. JT Miller was traded. We saw some moves, and I was kind of expecting more moves to come because, there was a flurry before the day started, and we hadn't really seen any on Friday. So I kind of started to think, we're going to see the moves we didn't see on Friday now. And then really that was it. Not counting the draft day trades to just kind of move up or down in the draft.
Right.
Essentially. But yeah, that was really it. And the Wild did not trade Jason Zucker over the weekend, which, you maybe kind of thought that was going to happen. But Paul Fenn on Friday came out and said, he wasn't, quote, going to get rid of Zucker unless it was for the right deal.
Sure.
Quote.
Sure.
Which, that's a poor choice of words, sir, but whatever. You're just basically...
He's chock full of poor choices of words.
It just... You could literally say anything else in that spot and be fine, but you chose that choice of words and you make the player feel less welcomed here, and he doesn't feel that welcomed at all to begin with.
Right.
At that juncture. So that was after Jason Zucker won the King Clancy Memorial Award over the week for his humanitarian services.
Yep.
Basically his charitable stuff, which, as we later found, wasn't going to be the greatest look for the team, so maybe they pumped the brakes on any kind of Zucker talk.
Yeah, it sure seems that way.
But anyway, rounds 2 through 7, the Wild had 7 picks over the course of Saturday, but they made some moves, so it wasn't all set in stone before the day began. But they did start at number 42 overall in the second round. On Saturday, they draft a left winger, Vladislav Firstov, a winger from he played last year in the USHL for Waterloo, in native of Russia, obviously. And as I pointed out, the Wild have now drafted a player of Russian descent in each of the last 5 drafts, starting with noted prospect Kirill Kaprizov.
Who?
Yeah. And basically all the players that I noted, all of their last name ended with Ov. So there was a run on Ov jokes, which just, folks, don't. Please. I've heard them all. Don't need them anymore. They've all been used. Just cut it out.
Mm-hmm.
Another player with high offensive upside. So
yeah,
I couldn't complain with that. The Wild were supposed to pick in round 3, but they traded up into the second round again at pick 59. They drafted goaltender Hunter Jones out of Peterborough of the OHL. Had a rough second half of the year, but kind of reading the reports, he played a lot of minutes this last year, which really impacted his stats. He,
and his team wasn't very good.
Right, and he showed fatigue. So, you think the Wild maybe saw a little bit more in him than maybe what those stats would incline, because, you play that much, you're going to get gassed. And I tweeted out, I guess that's good that he plays a lot, because the Wild don't believe in having a backup goaltender. So if he rises to the rank of starting goaltender, he can be a good fit, because the Wild rely on their goaltenders to start 65 plus games a year. So I honestly can't complain with those 2 picks in round 2. I thought at 42 the Wild might go with a goaltender, considering there was a brief run on them early in the second round.
Yeah.
But they didn't. They took Firstov, and then they traded back up to get Hunter Jones, who they were really big on. So you can't complain, because scoring wingers, or scoring forwards essentially, and goaltenders is a huge lack of in the Wild prospect pool. And I noted that last week, that the Wild don't have much of that, and the Wild have addressed that, and we're going to come to more in a little bit. But addressing that really right out of the gate on day 2 is a positive again.
Yeah.
And
it was interesting to me that they took a goalie. Not only did they took him, but that they traded up to get him.
the second highest drafted goaltender in the history of the Minnesota Wild, only trailing Josh Harding, who I think was drafted 38th overall in 2002.
So it's odd to me. They must not have thought as much of Spencer Knight, because they very much had an opportunity to take him at 12. A lot of people thought they were going to take him at 12. He was a very popular mock draft pick of theirs. You wrote an article about it last week. But then they take Hunter Jones, who, kind of, I don't want to say he's a flash in the pan because he didn't have that good of a season, but he was a guy that just kind of got thrust into a starting role this past year and, had a good first half of the season at least. And then, like you said, kind of fell off a little bit in the second half. But it's interesting to me. It's very interesting because if you're going to take it, to me, if you were going to take a goalie and you were going to take why didn't they take him with their second round pick then? I get that first off is a good talent. And I'm not saying first off was a bad pick or anything. I think he was a fine pick. But it's just, seeing as how goalies are kind of a totally different animal, in order to take a goalie high, because there's so much risk involved with them, you have to be really sold on their skill set. You have to be really sold on the fact that you think that they can develop. And it just seems really weird to me that they drafted a goalie, that they traded up in the second round after not taking him with a pick just minutes before. 12 picks before that? Something like that? 14 picks before
17.
that? Yeah, something like that. So that's just weird to me. It's just weird. It's not a bad thing, and I hope that Hunter Jones works out, obviously. But it's just weird to me. I
mean, you're not wrong, but at the same time, I don't know. I think, maybe they weren't that, high on Jones at that point with 42.
That's
I
weird.
don't know. There's no, I guess there's maybe no good way to, try to defend that, but you might be better in that question, but I don't know. Maybe it also came to the point where they felt that Jones wasn't going to be available when they picked in the third round.
True.
And so they felt...
Maybe the run on goalies did spook them into trading for that pick. Yeah.
So maybe they felt like they were going to need to get back up high, early third or late second to take him. So, maybe they find a team, early in the third round to trade with. Maybe they trade with and then take Jones, who seemingly probably was better going to go there. But they found someone late in the second at 59 overall to make that move, and they did. Yeah. So that's also the first time since 2010 when the Wild had multiple second-round picks, which, is amazing. Philadelphia and Chuck Fletcher also traded up in the second round. So, take that for what it is. But
it's more exciting that he had a second-round pick.
But, yeah, that I wasn't, again, appalled by that move, and I liked it. You're getting up into the second round where there's still a decent chance at quality in the draft from a player. So, good on them, because we don't see that. You don't see the Wild move up in the second round.
Sure, absolutely.
They're, in fact, pretty much for the duration of this bloody podcast, we've had very little second-round picks to talk about. So
Jordan Greenway, that's literally it.
Yeah.
He's the one.
The one. So yeah, there's that. And so the Wild were without now their third-round pick because they used that to move up to 59. Mm-hmm. But then they traded with Nashville for the 75th overall pick in the third round. They traded a third in 2020 to get that selection. Which is
a pretty good deal to basically put the gamble on Nashville to say, hey, take the exact same round.
Basically, Nashville was being like, okay, we can take a third next year and see what happens. But the Wild draft Adam Beckman, a winger out of the WHL from Spokane. And again, as I noted, another player that had seemingly some good offensive upside to him. Obviously, a lot of polishing to go to go. But yeah, that another good pick to me, in my opinion.
Sure.
You're still addressing an organizational need, and it's also following the pattern that we saw on day 2 in 2018, where the Wild were taking players with high ceilings, not high floors, which we have talked about time and time again that they don't need to do, is take players with high floors, but they need to take players with high ceilings and hope a couple of them start panning out.
Agreed.
So there you have Adam Beckman. Then the Wild also used their 4th-round pick to move up to get Hunter Jones. So they went through the 4th round without a pick. They just kind of stood pat and let that go, but they still had 4 picks left in the day. And then in the 5th round, at 149th overall, they select Matt V. Guskov, center from Russia, out of the OHL in London. Again, another... No, he might have been that player that was the two-way player. Yeah, he was. He projected to be a little bit more of a two-way player, which we've heard about in our history.
It's fair to say.
But, again, this is a forward that the Wild are trying to address an organizational lack of in their system, so you can't complain. Then you go into the 6th. Marshall Warren, a defenseman who they drafted at 166 from the U.S. Development team. And this was somebody who should have been going earlier in the draft, rounds 3 or 4. He was really projected to go, and he slipped to the 6th. So I thought that was a good move for the Wild. Just kind of a...
Did he wear a flamboyant suit to the draft?
Probably.
Is that why he fell?
It's probably it. But, just kind of a good all-around defenseman, projects to kind of be a second pair defenseman in the NHL if he can...
Sure.
If he can hone his skills in that way. Kind of a balanced defenseman, so it can provide some offense, but also good defensively. So, not a Jonas Brodin, but also not a Matt Dumba, kind of a little bit in between if you're trying to, perfectly think about what that player might be.
Sure.
And then also in the 6 picks later, the Wild at 172 draft, Nikita Nesterenko from the United States, high school, New Jersey, which is...
You wouldn't guess that by his name.
No.
Were they just getting drunk on Russians this year? Is that the deal? They just
he makes me think of the Wolves center Rasho Nesterovich.
Rasho. Yeah, like the Wild are just like trying to...
I'm sorry, I've been talking to your friends all day, so I'm just loaded
early
with
2000s
basketball.
Timberwolves,
Yeah, basketball. We also went down the list of like obscure Twins third basemen today.
Oh yeah,
and I scared the hell out of your friend Carol when I threw out Ruben Sierra.
Oh God, that was...
But he was a designated hitter.
He was.
He kind of went a little pale after I said Ruben Sierra because I said I can't think of his name. It was the player on the Yankees who torched the Twins in the 04 ALDS.
Yeah.
He came to play for us later.
Did you guys bring up Tony Batista?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He mentioned him and his obscure
goofy
stance.
Yeah, his wide open stance.
Yeah. So, sorry, that...
Good stuff.
Nikita Nesterenko makes me think of Rasho Nesterovich.
I understand. Yeah, it seems like with, possibly, let's say, perhaps maybe a Russian player is coming to play with the Wild soon.
Yeah,
seems like they're kind of loading up
the
organization.
To make them feel welcome.
Right.
And again, just actually, there wasn't a whole lot on Nesterenko, so I don't have a whole lot on him.
Yeah,
he was a little bit of an unknown to me, but hopefully, there's a good potential there. I'm guessing because these guys have been basically picking high ceiling players all draft and even in the last year's draft.
No.
And then at the end, in the 7th round at 197, the Wild draft goaltender Philip Lindbergh, who had played for UMass in Hockey East last year, was actually one of the better goaltenders in college hockey, per our friend Nate Wells.
Sure.
So that That
It's
was
always
a good,
interesting the way that
good pick.
college hockey doesn't translate as well to the NHL as we would hope.
Right, especially for goaltenders.
Yeah. And so obviously for instance, the Wild just signed Matt Robson. Literally, the best goalie in U of M history as far as statistics go. But not a touted prospect at all. And this guy, same thing, like one of the top goalies in college hockey. He's a seventh round flyer.
Yeah.
Just like, we hope he can do okay. It's weird to me. It's weird. And I do like that they're bolstering the goaltending in the organization. I think that's something that was long ignored under Chuck Fletcher. I think he picked one goaltender in the last.
It was.
He picked Alex Stejska in.
Yeah, it was like
4 years ago or 5 years ago.
Capo Kakinen 5 years ago, and then Ellis Stejska.
Yeah.
4 years ago, and that
really
was
been
it.
And so I am as a goaltending aficionado as myself, I'm glad that they're focusing on that. I just I felt the Hunter Jones pick was a little bit weird, and this pick, not weird, but it's just like, well, it's a flyer. I mean, you kind of hope this guy is good enough to bolster your Iowa lineup, I think, maybe.
Yeah, and we'll see what happens because goaltenders are really a crapshoot to kind of project. And, skaters are a little easier to project and figure out and whatnot, but goaltenders are a crapshoot. So, wouldn't surprise me if, the 7th round pick pans out better than the 2nd round pick.
Oh, for sure.
It could go the other way. We don't know.
Well, we're watching a 7th round pick of Paul Fenton right now on this highlight reel. Pecorini. I mean, not bad for a 7th round pick.
Right. And that's, typically what you get with goalies. And, but I will argue the best goaltender in Wild history was their highest drafted goaltender in Wild history, Josh Harding.
Well, and there's something to be said for that. I know a lot of people are against drafting goaltenders high. And I understand that there's a lot of risk involved.
And I'm one of them who doesn't justify a 1st-round pick in a goaltender. Like, once you get into round 2, that's fine. But first round, no.
But, our friend Brian Reynolds was arguing with someone on Twitter. Stop me if you've heard that before. And Brian brought up a good point. Somebody said, you just don't take goalies in the 1st round. And it was kind of a blanket statement. And, I get it from a risk standpoint. People are looking at the analytics. Not a lot of those goalies make it. But if you're looking for, a generational goalie, a Hall of Fame caliber goalie, there has been a lot of them drafted in the 1st round. And that's kind of the distinction that I make is like, is it risky? Absolutely. But if you want to get that kind of goalie, if you want to get the, Marty Brodeurs, the Patrick Waz, that level of goaltender, sometimes, if their skills are that, I think that was the argument with Spencer Knight, was that his skills were that impressive, that, he was that good that it justified him going in the 1st round. You don't see 1st-round goalies very often in the NHL draft. So you really have to be absolutely 100% sold that they are going to be that good. And I think that, he kind of justified that. And so I'm not against it, especially being a goalie aficionado. So I don't know. That just leads to further intrigue for me on them not taking Spencer Knight, because it's like, if he turns out as good as some people think he can be, if he turns out to be prime Carey Price good, maybe the Wild did miss out on not taking him.
So yeah, that was the Wild's draft selections. I had 8 picks, and I wrote about on Zone Coverage that they really had a good Saturday in addition to a good Friday night.
Yeah.
And I also piled in that they didn't trade Jason Zucker for a bag of peanuts, which is also a good day for Wild fans. So you should feel good about the draft picks and the lack of trading Zucker for nothing. But, trying to fire positivity into the Wild fan crowd basically was the equivalent of tossing a snowball into hell.
Yeah.
So...
Well, and seeing what Patrick Marleau was traded for, or what I should say, seeing what Toronto had to give up to get rid of Patrick Marleau, it just makes you feel all that better about Jason Zucker. Obviously, Jason Zucker very different. He's literally, 12 years younger than Patrick Marleau. But you had to get rid of a 1st-round pick to get rid of Patrick Marleau. Like, that's wild, and it just kind of makes you wonder how much you would have even gotten back for Zucker if teams are literally paying first-round picks to get rid of players who are, granted, old and expensive, but useful and pretty good. It really does make you kind of shudder to think what, suddenly that Michael Frolik return doesn't look so nonsensical and looks eerily realistic.
Yeah. Do you have any other hot takes, or do you have any lasting thoughts on this draft before we shoot into the mailbag?
I think I've spewed all the hot takes I had. I'm fairly sure. Again, I think it was a decent draft by the Wild. I'm not ready to crown them any kind of victor or anything, but no, I think it was a good draft, and I think that it was good to see them take a guy in the first that was a good pick, if not a great pick, especially after last year. They took a guy who could very much be, a first-line, all-star level wing who scores. And that's something that, they probably haven't taken since Alex Tuck.
Right. That's really all you can ask for.
Right.
But, yeah. So we're going to open up the mailbag. We did throw out a question from our podcast account at JTG Wild Podcast. But we also did get a question from a listener earlier in the week who I asked to remind me, and he actually just reminded me 2 minutes ago, right before we went into the mailbag. Timing. So his timing was impeccable here. And that's from Aaron Anderson, who asks, if you had to choose one, would you rather draft well in the first round and poorly in rounds 2 through 7, or vice versa?
Ooh, that's a good question. I think it really depends on as to what level, how good we're talking here. Because it's awfully hard to build a good winning team without any first-round successes. Mm-hmm. That being said, there's a lot of guys drafted 2 through 7 that turn out to be very, very good. A lot of guys, So I think you could probably do it either way. I think just for the simple sake of the question, I might go 2 through 7, just because you probably have an easier time filling out your roster that way. If you have dynamite 2 through 7 picks, you get some all-stars out of there, because it's entirely possible to do that. Mm-hmm. And so if you do that and you get some other good role-playing players 2 through 7, probably a lot easier to build a team than just only getting one draft pick right every year. I get where he's going with the question, an elite talent versus a very good talent, I guess, question. But yeah, if you only got one pick right every year, even if it was your first round pick, it would be probably a little bit tougher to fill out your team.
I disagree. I'm going to go with a first round pick over 2
that's
through
totally
7.
Fair. Yeah.
It's because I think there's better quality of players in the first round, so I think you have better chance to really hit that home run. Sure. And really build your team around that. And as we've seen with the Wild over the years, they have no problem drafting career third liners who can fill out your roster. So
that's fair.
You pick well in the first round, you really hit some home runs, and you have some franchise caliber players to build around, then you should have no problem building around them. So I'm going to go with round 1 as opposed to rounds 2 through 7, where you're really just kind of picking a ping pong ball in the hopes that something goes right.
No, I hadn't even really thought of free agency in that argument. So yeah, you're right. That makes more sense that way. If you can fill out the rest of the team in free agency, which you totally can.
I mean, yeah, free agency's good too, but really you want to build through the draft and with some trades, and you don't want to rely on free agency as much like some teams.
Sure. But to your point, getting third and fourth liners.
Right.
Is where you
that's kind of where
that's where
they're maybe don't sign them to 3-4 year deals, but
they're kind of plentiful in free agency. So,
question from David Birdbag, a a favorite photographer of mine who does some good work shooting Wild games, among other things. He says, "Hi, question for Mr. Farrell. In episode 2F09, when Itchy plays Scratchy Skeleton like a xylophone, he strikes that same rib twice in succession, yet he produces two clearly different tones. I mean, are we to believe that this is some sort of magic xylophone or something?" He's clearly referencing the Itchy and Scratchy and Poochie Simpsons episode where Homer goes on a Q&A panel with the other voice actor, and he just completely obliterates the nerds in the crowd. So tip of the cap to Mr. Birdbag for firing that into the mailbag, because that's a good quotable right there.
That's fantastic.
And we got Serious Mashup wants to know who will be our next GM.
Well, I mean, I could restart the Rem for GM campaign. I really feel like I could probably get legs on it this time, but it's going to take a lot of work and a lot of cooperation from a lot of Wild fans. So that's my first answer. Otherwise, I mean, sheesh. Emmanuel Perry, let's go with that.
Manny Elk.
Yeah, Manny Elk.
Manny Elk was actually not big on the Wild draft, so
that's fine.
I don't know.
That's fair.
I'm going to punt on that question. Also, Serious Mashup, I want to know, I saw a fan who flew into the draft from Austria. I wanted to know, when are you going to do that?
The vacation packages?
Sir, is that going to be the next time the draft is here in Minnesota?
He did visit Minnesota. I remember us doing a question about it. We gave him a tourism guide on the show.
I know he has.
We never found out what happened with said trip to Minnesota.
I know he has a kid, so I'm sure
he certainly never visited us, which is disappointing.
That probably played into the budget of traveling.
He could have been a guest on the show. I'm just saying.
I mean, he still can. Offers open.
Sure.
But he also did ask, this draft was reasonably good. Why does Fenn seem to hate Jason Zucker personally? Anything to do with the dynamic in the room? Hashtag Suter, Parisi versus anybody else.
I don't buy into the Suter versus Parisi or Suter and Parisi versus everyone else as much. I don't know. I don't buy into it being that big of an issue or any reason why Jason Zucker is being traded.
I buy into the Suter versus anyone else because he's got an in with the owner.
Maybe, but I don't know. It just is there any kind of bad blood between him and Zucker? I don't know that's...
No, but I don't think Suter has anything to do with the Zucker trade. I'm just saying Suter kind of has a superiority complex because he has an in with the owner.
Okay, sure, but...
Also, I think to answer the question originally... I think Paul Fenn wants to rid himself of Chuck Fletcher's team. So that's why he has an in for getting rid of Jason Zucker.
Yeah.
And I think he's gone the whole wrong way about it. And I'm also very sympathetic to Zucker's situation where basically, he gets traded and, his wife and kids are staying here. So, that makes it very difficult. And I think that makes it more maddening to me that Paul Fenn has been a complete, idiot about what he says and what's gotten leaked out in regards to the whole Zucker situation. So he's made a bad situation worse, and I don't know. Jason Zucker's going to seemingly now come back next year unless there's a right move to be had, which could happen this week.
Entirely possible.
If he comes back, either he's going to have the best year that you've ever seen, or he is going to have the worst year you've ever seen. And that's coming off a pretty bad season where he only scored 21 goals.
Relatively,
and I don't know. It's a bad situation.
I don't know what Fenton's beef is.
We don't know.
He signed Zucker to that. That's why I started calling him Crazy Pills Paul. Was he signed Jason Zucker to this contract? And now it seems like he will
traded him right then and there.
He will do anything to get rid of Jason Zucker's contract. Like, I don't know. Did you decide in a half a season that you didn't like this guy all of a sudden? It just seems very weird to me, and the whole situation is very, very weird to me. So, I don't know.
Johnson from Wisconsin asked a comment about skipping Knight and moving up to take Jones. We did pretty much, kind of hit on that.
It is weird to me.
In the show.
If that raises an eyebrow for you, I'm with you on that.
Yeah.
It just seems to me like maybe taking Knight and just obviously you don't get Boldi, but taking Knight, it would maybe have been the better bet if you were going to try to find your goaltender of the future. But who knows?
Then our last question in the mailbag comes from Silly Sam on Twitter. And he asks, do we have enough right-handed wingers?
No.
God damn it.
Never enough. There's never enough right-handed wingers because all these Canadians keep raising their dang kids to play left-handed.
Your friends love to push my buttons.
Oh, good old Sam.
No, the Wild don't need right shot. And
in the draft, you're saying?
Right.
In free agency, I think I don't want to say it should be a priority, but maybe it should be a priority.
He's just pushing my buttons.
Well, definitely, 100%, yeah.
Because he saw me fighting people about not
that's what makes
needing
it funny.
Right shots. Yeah, and
in the draft, I agree with you completely. I don't think that you draft based on handedness.
It's weird how your friends know what buttons to push on me.
Well, they
Do
follow
they
us
have
on
some
Twitter.
Insider information.
They follow us both on Twitter, so they see the sparring. So they're well aware of that kind of stuff.
I know of the one. I don't know of the other. I have to find the other.
Oh, okay.
Sounds like a mission for me, but no, I'm just kidding. I love them. They're fun. It's just some insider jokes because 50 minutes today after Sam asked the question, I saw it while I was grabbing a beer, and then I replied to him, GDI, and then he just started laughing at me. So I had to rip on him a little bit because son of a bitch.
Yep. That'll
Don't
happen.
do that. So yeah, that was our mailbag. Thank you to everyone, including Sam, for putting in your questions, and we can probably call it a show unless you have anything else you wish to add.
No, I'm good. We didn't do any free agency primer at all.
Yeah.
Do you expect anything to happen? I mean, Brett Connolly's a name that gets thrown a lot. There's people that think somehow, some way, they're going to try to sign Artemi Panarin or Joe Pavelski. I don't see either of those things happening.
I'm bigger on the Wayne Simmons, as we talked about last week.
I would totally agree with that. I would love to see that.
I will say this. I know Michael Russo has been pushing this hard, and after doing a little bit of research and trying to juggle some stuff around, I'm wholeheartedly agreeing with him in that the Wild have to seemingly move somebody if they want to be a little more active in free agency.
I don't know that they need to.
Unless you want to shovel Cunnin and Greenway into the minors to start the year.
Well,
but otherwise, I would love to see them get a Wayne Simmons as a right shot, kind of power play help. The Wild did sign Brad Hunt to a 2-year extension,
which is good,
at $700,000 AAV.
Good price.
Cap hit. Good price for a 6'7" defenseman who has a good power play skills. But yeah, like a Wayne Simmons type. I don't know if they're gonna be able to go at like a Brock Nelson, who everyone has a hard on for.
Didn't he sign?
Or is it Anders Lee?
Yeah, Anders
Brock
Lee.
Nelson or Anders Lee?
I think Nelson signed.
Okay.
Anders Lee still hasn't yet, but
Yeah.
he's got a year left.
And then, Pavelski seemingly is out there who could be of interest, but again, it seems like his first priority would be to sign with the Sharks.
Yeah.
And then kind of go from there, but, who knows? Like, a lot depends on what the Wild do over the course of the week leading up to free agency.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you see some moves, trades, or just the Wild just getting rid of a couple guys off the roster, clear some space, then yeah, that should indicate they're going to be active in free agency. And if you don't, then, they very well could maybe not do a whole lot. And, you're looking at a pretty similar team that we saw at the end of last year going into the beginning of next year, which it's not going to sell a lot of tickets, not going to draw a lot of interest. But it could be a thing where Paul Finn just kind of, takes what he can go into the season and then maybe make some more moves, during the year next year.
So I actually had 2 questions come into me I totally forgot about until now, and they're pertinent. Sean Cosgrove wants to know, any chance Simmons becomes a 50-point player again?
No.
Really? You don't think so?
I don't think he can be 50 points. I think he can get up over 40 again. But I think given his age,
he's only 30.
I guess...
I think
I'm not going to say no, but I think a lot of it has to come on the power play. So he has to be given a prominent power play role, which he could hear as the only right shot on this team.
Yeah, but Dumba is back.
Right. So it's possible, but I'm going to tend to say no. I think he's more of a 40-plus point caliber player.
See, I think he can be. I think you're right. He needs the right situation. But I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility. I think that this could be an Eric Stahl type situation where you've got him at a good
Fresh
price,
life.
might rejuvenate him a little bit. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, I still am in favor of signing Simmons. Obviously, the money has to be right. The years have to be right. I don't want Simmons at $5 million for 5 years. More like, $5 million isn't horrific, but $4 to $5 million for more like 3 years. Yeah, I wouldn't go anything over that. Anyway, so finally, a question here. We finally get a question that pertains to this podcast because this is a Vegas Golden Knights podcast. Who do you think gets dealt from Vegas for them to get under the salary cap? Right now, Vegas, the only team actually actively over the salary cap of $81.5 million. Do you have any inkling? They just signed Carlson, so...
Marchessault's name has been thrown out there. He's a
Sure.
possibility. It's so weird to think how they're already so far out in cap hell
right
after just a couple years. But
so I'm looking at it here. A name that makes a lot of sense to me is Paul Stassney. 33 years old, $6.5 million for the next 2 seasons. Not necessarily a hugely key cog to their team right now. I mean, obviously he's their top center, but I think that they might be able to do without, quite possibly, just because he's also of the guys that are making, of anybody on the team that's making more than $4 million, he's got the shortest contract left. He's only got 2 years. Everyone else is 3 or 4 or 5 or even more. So I think that Paul Stassney would be a guy to look out for. Not that you're going to get a ton of takers for him. You're basically going to have to give him away. But very interesting player.
it's possible maybe they try to maybe sell off a couple of other, maybe not larger contracts. And
Yeah. Nate Schmidt, also a guy that making a lot of money for them. It's entirely possible. I think he's become a face of the franchise there, though.
Yeah, I see a Stassney as a guy you're not going to move. He wanted to be there, and
Sure. Yeah, I suppose.
They really wanted to sign him to give them depth at center. A name that is interesting to me.
Are you going where I think you're going, Giles?
I'm gonna quick look this up before I put my foot in my mouth. But the Golden Knights are kind of deep at center this last year, and that didn't include a player very near and dear to my heart. And that's Eric Halla, who I'm kind of wondering about the future of in Vegas, and he really got derailed by that knee injury this last year.
Yeah. Yep, for sure.
And feel really bad for him, but he's got a $275 million cap hit, and then he's a free agent after this year.
Yeah,
he's a free agent after this year.
He could theoretically come back to the team that
He won't.
jettisoned him. No, he won't. He sure won't. But
back,
anyway,
come home.
But yeah, it's a
come
it's a
home,
good
my
thought.
son.
It's a good thought.
But I wonder what the future holds for him, and if maybe somebody wants to take a flyer on him.
Yeah, be interesting.
His
to
value is kind of low because of the injury, but
Yep.
I think you're going to get a very motivated player next year because it's a contract year.
Yeah.
And he's now 28. Wow.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I don't know. Like, and other guys like, man, they're paying Ryan Reeves $2,775.
Oh, that's a good name to cut.
Cody Eakin, they could just as equally move. Who's making $385 million on the cap. They still haven't signed like Nikita Gusev and Thomas Nosek, who are RFAs. And then we have the Carlson extension, which hasn't hit cap friendly yet, but there's a lot going on with the Golden Knights. So, really, really interesting to see what happens. And they also have to sign Malcolm Subban, who's an RFA. So,
yikes!
A lot of balls in the air for our beloved Golden Knights. But yeah. So, good question. Since we're
we are
a budding
Golden
Knights podcast.
That's true. All right.
Yeah,
That's
that
all
can
I
do
got.
it. That can do it for us.
Sounds good.
Thank you for listening. Thank you for, sticking around, asking the mailbag questions to everyone. Follow us on Twitter at Ben Remington, at Giles Farrell, podcast at GATG Wild Podcast, SoundCloud, iTunes, iHeartRadio, Google Play, Spotify, all that good stuff. You listen on iTunes, drop us a rating. It definitely helps boost us up in the rating system. And then follow us at zonecoverage.com/wild for all the written work. I did a lot of work this last week on draft-related stuff, and still going through player reviews. We'll do more player reviews this week and try to, go through, maybe like free agent kind of stuff now as we move towards free agency next week. So look forward to that. Again, zonecoverage.com. And if you are so inclined, subscribe. Go to zonecoverage.com/subscribe. And subscribe to the site, and it helps promote not only our show and our work, but everyone else at the site. So we greatly appreciate it. So that will wrap it up for us this week, and we will be back next week with episode 200 of the Giles and the Goalie podcast.
Later.
It's not resiliency. You're making it sound like we're good. That's all. I'm done.